Your soulmate is slowly realizing that losing you would change their life forever. Don't scroll, because the person you have been trying so hard to understand is beginning to understand something about you that they should have recognized a long time ago. My beloved child, this message is for you, and your heart needs this right now. Your soulmate is slowly realizing that losing you would not simply mean losing another person from their life. It would mean losing a connection that changed the way they feel, the way they think, and even the way they imagine their future. For a long time, they tried to act as though they had everything under control. They told themselves there was plenty of time. They believed they could remain distant, avoid difficult conversations, and somehow return whenever they felt ready. But something inside them has started changing. They are noticing that your energy is no longer waiting in the same place. They can feel that you are becoming stronger. They can sense that you are beginning to protect your heart differently. And now a thought they once avoided is becoming impossible to ignore. What if I actually lose them? Listen to this, because that question has begun to follow them into quiet moments, late nights, and places where distractions can no longer protect them from the truth. Pause here for a moment, because their biggest realization did not come from something dramatic. It came from your absence. There were things about you they had grown accustomed to without realizing how valuable they were. Your kindness. Your patience. The way you listened. The way you noticed small changes in their mood. The way you could sense something was wrong before they ever explained it. Your soulmate may have taken those things for granted because they assumed they would always have another chance to experience them. But now, when they go through difficult moments, they notice the difference. When something happens and they instinctively think about telling you, they remember the distance. When they hear something funny and imagine your reaction, they feel the silence between you. When life becomes heavy, they remember how safe it felt to have someone who understood them without demanding that they become perfect first. My beloved child, your heart needs this right now because sometimes people understand the value of a connection only after they can no longer access it in the same way. And your soulmate is beginning to feel that truth deeply. Listen closely, because something has shifted in the way they see your silence. Before, they may have believed your quietness meant you were waiting. They thought you were simply giving them space. They assumed that whenever they decided to return emotionally, you would still be there exactly as they remembered you. But now they are beginning to wonder whether your silence means something else. Maybe you are healing. Maybe you are releasing the need for answers. Maybe you are learning that peace feels better than constantly trying to decode someone's mixed signals. Don't scroll, because this realization is creating an urgency they never expected to feel. They are starting to understand that your heart has limits too. You can love deeply and still reach a point where you stop chasing. You can care and still choose yourself. You can remember someone and still decide that your future cannot depend on whether they finally become ready. This change in you is becoming one of the strongest mirrors your soulmate has ever faced. Something about the signs around you may also feel different lately, and this is where your spiritual awakening becomes important. Maybe you keep noticing 111 when your thoughts shift toward a new beginning. Perhaps 222 appears when you are questioning whether this connection can ever become balanced. Maybe 444 shows up during those moments when you need emotional stability, or 555 appears when you feel that change is coming but cannot yet see what form it will take. My beloved child, let these signs bring you back to yourself. Do not use them as reasons to chase someone who is still uncertain. Let them remind you that the universe often speaks through reflection as much as through prediction. Ask yourself what this connection has taught you. Ask what kind of love you are willing to receive now. Ask whether the version of you who first met this soulmate would recognize how much stronger you have become. This message is for you because your awakening is not only about whether they return. It is about whether you are becoming ready for love that knows how to stay. Don't look away, because your soulmate has begun imagining a future they never wanted to picture. They are imagining you truly moving on. Not pretending. Not posting something to get a reaction. Not trying to make them jealous. Actually moving forward. They imagine someone else discovering the softness in your heart. Someone else receiving the loyalty they once had access to. Someone else hearing your stories, making you laugh, checking on you after a difficult day, and giving you the consistency you once wished your soulmate would give. And that thought has started affecting them more than they expected. Listen to this, because the pain they feel is not simply jealousy. It is recognition. They are beginning to understand that if someone else learns how to value you properly, they may have to live with the knowledge that they had the opportunity first and allowed fear, pride, or confusion to get in the way. Here is where everything begins to feel more serious. Your soulmate is starting to question their own decisions. They are replaying conversations where they could have said more. They remember moments when you gave them an opening to be honest, but they changed the subject. They remember when you needed reassurance, but they chose silence. They remember times when they felt something powerful and then immediately tried to minimize it because admitting the truth felt too vulnerable. My beloved child, this message is for you because they are beginning to see those moments through different eyes. At the time, they thought they were protecting themselves. Now they wonder whether they were slowly pushing away something they actually wanted. That realization hurts because it means they can no longer blame everything on timing, circumstances, or confusion. They are beginning to recognize the role fear played in creating the distance between you. Your heart needs this right now. You were never supposed to prove your worth by waiting forever. There may have been nights when you wondered what else you could have done. Maybe you replayed your own words, your own behavior, searching for the moment everything changed. Maybe you wondered whether you cared too much, whether you were too available, too emotional, too honest, or simply not enough. But listen closely. Someone else's inability to show up does not automatically mean there was something wrong with you. Your soulmate may have been facing a battle that existed long before you entered their life. Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing control. Fear of repeating old heartbreak. Sometimes a person can meet something genuine and still run because genuine love requires them to become more emotionally honest than they have ever been. That may explain what happened, but it does not mean you must accept endless uncertainty. Stay with me, because your soulmate is beginning to understand that hidden love has consequences. They may have believed that feeling something deeply was enough, even if they never expressed it properly. But love that remains hidden forever can begin to feel like absence to the person who needs to receive it. My beloved child, this is one of the hardest truths they are starting to face. They may have cared. They may have missed you. They may have thought about you more often than you realized. But you cannot build a future on emotions that remain locked inside another person's mind. At some point, feelings have to become communication. Intention has to become action. Connection has to become consistency. And your soulmate is slowly realizing that if they truly cannot imagine losing you, then eventually they must become brave enough to show you why. Listen to this, because there has been one particular emotional shift inside them recently. They stopped asking, "Why do I still think about this person?" and started asking, "What happens if they stop thinking about me?" That question changed the energy completely. For a long time, they focused only on their own fears, their own timing, their own confusion. But now they are beginning to see the situation from your side. They are imagining what their silence felt like to you. They are thinking about how many times you probably questioned the connection because they failed to communicate. They are wondering whether you cried privately while they were trying to convince themselves everything was under control. And my beloved child, that awareness is making them uncomfortable in a way that distraction cannot fix. Don't scroll, because regret is beginning to mix with fear. Your soulmate may be realizing that they cannot simply return later and expect everything to feel the same. Time changes people. Distance teaches lessons. Silence can create emotional boundaries. You are not frozen in the version of yourself they remember. You are growing. You are learning. You are discovering that your love is valuable and should not be offered endlessly to someone who refuses to meet you halfway. And this is what scares them. They are beginning to understand that if they do come back, they may have to meet a new version of you, a version that still has compassion but also has standards, a version that can listen to an apology without immediately forgetting what happened, a version that no longer confuses potential with commitment. My beloved child, there is another layer to this awakening that they did not expect. They are starting to miss not only you, but the version of themselves that existed around you. Around you, perhaps they felt softer, more hopeful, more open. Maybe they laughed more easily. Maybe they felt understood without having to perform. Maybe you made them think about a future they had stopped believing was possible. And now they are noticing how different they feel without that connection. Listen to this. Sometimes someone does not understand what another person awakened inside them until that person steps away. Your soulmate is beginning to realize that you did more than enter their life. You made parts of them feel alive again. Pay attention to this next part, because this is where the universe may be asking you to stop focusing only on their awakening and notice your own. You have changed too. Maybe you once believed that finding your soulmate meant holding on to them no matter what. Now you are learning that real spiritual love does not require self-abandonment. You can believe in destiny and still require respect. You can believe in divine timing and still refuse to wait endlessly. You can notice angel numbers and synchronicities without allowing them to override reality. If 222 keeps showing up, let it remind you that balance matters. If 444 appears, remember that stability is sacred. If 555 keeps finding you, perhaps let it symbolize that change is not your enemy. And if 111 catches your attention, ask yourself what kind of new chapter you are ready to create. Here is the truth your soulmate is beginning to fear most: your life may become beautiful without them. Don't scroll. They are realizing that you are capable of healing. Capable of finding joy again. Capable of being loved by someone who does not make you question where you stand. And instead of being able to assume that you will always remain emotionally connected to them, they now have to face uncertainty. What if they meet someone? What if they stop missing me? What if one day I finally become ready, but they have already learned to live without me? These questions are creating a kind of emotional pressure that their old coping mechanisms cannot easily silence. Your heart needs this right now, because none of this means you should put your life on pause waiting for them to act. Their realization belongs to them. Their courage is their responsibility. Their healing is their work. You are allowed to move forward while they figure themselves out. You are allowed to say, "I care, but I need consistency." You are allowed to ask for clarity. You are allowed to protect your peace. My beloved child, true soulmate energy should not keep you trapped in endless confusion. If this connection is meant to become something real, both people eventually have to participate. Stay with this message, because their next realization may become the turning point. Your soulmate is slowly understanding that there is no perfect moment to tell the truth. They kept waiting until they felt less afraid. They kept telling themselves they would speak when circumstances became easier, when emotions settled down, when they had everything figured out. But the longer they waited, the more complicated everything became. And now they are starting to see that courage may not mean waiting until fear disappears. Courage may mean speaking while fear is still there. Listen carefully, because there is something they want to say that goes much deeper than, "I miss you." Somewhere inside them is a confession that sounds more like, "I did not understand how much you meant to me until I realized I could actually lose you. I thought you would always be there. I thought I had more time. I thought I could avoid my feelings and come back when I was ready. But now I see that your life is moving too." My beloved child, they may never use those exact words, but this emotional truth is becoming harder for them to deny. Don't leave this message yet, because the biggest shift is still happening. Your soulmate is standing at an emotional crossroads. One path allows them to remain silent, stay protected, and continue wondering what might have happened. The other requires vulnerability. It requires honesty. It requires admitting that they handled certain things badly and accepting that you may not respond the way they hope. That is what scares them most. Not simply losing you, but finally opening their heart and discovering that they waited too long. And here is the cliffhanger your heart may have been waiting for. Something recently happened that made the possibility of losing you feel real instead of imaginary. Maybe they saw a change in you. Maybe they heard something. Maybe your silence became louder than any conversation. Maybe they sensed that your energy was no longer chasing them. Whatever happened, it shook them. My beloved child, don't scroll away from what comes next, because your soulmate is not only realizing that losing you would change their life forever, they are beginning to think about what they may have to do before that loss becomes permanent. And the decision forming inside them now could reveal whether their fear is finally becoming smaller than their desire to tell you the truth. Don't scroll, because the decision forming inside your soulmate is becoming harder for them to ignore with every passing day. My beloved child, they are starting to understand that there is a difference between missing someone and realizing that person changed your emotional world forever. For a long time, your soulmate believed they could control this connection by controlling how much they showed. They believed that if they kept their feelings hidden, they would stay safe. They thought silence would protect them from rejection, disappointment, or heartbreak. But listen to this, because silence did not make the connection disappear. It made them notice your absence even more. Every quiet moment became a reminder. Every day without your energy became another opportunity for them to recognize what was missing. And now they are confronting the possibility that the person they were trying so hard not to need may have become one of the most meaningful people they have ever known. Your heart needs this right now, because something inside them recently changed from uncertainty into fear. Before, they wondered whether you might eventually walk away. Now they are beginning to believe that you actually could. That difference matters. They can sense that you are not holding on to this connection with the same desperation you once carried. They may feel that you are becoming more peaceful, more self-aware, and less willing to chase answers that should have been offered freely. My beloved child, this message is for you because your growth is becoming visible in ways you may not even realize. You are learning that love is not supposed to make you beg for basic communication. You are learning that destiny does not ask you to abandon your dignity. And as you become stronger, your soulmate is realizing that they may no longer be able to depend on your patience while they remain undecided. Listen closely, because they have started replaying the moments when you gave more than they understood at the time. Your soulmate remembers how you showed up emotionally when they were overwhelmed. They remember how you cared about details that other people overlooked. They remember the times you asked whether they were okay and actually wanted the real answer. Maybe they remember the way you forgave something quickly, the way you gave them another chance, or the way you tried to understand their silence instead of immediately walking away. Don't scroll, because those memories are beginning to feel different now. What once seemed normal is becoming precious in hindsight. They are recognizing that genuine emotional safety is not something people encounter every day. And the thought that they may have taken it for granted is creating a kind of regret they can no longer push away. Pause here, because the universe may be showing you something important about this connection through your own emotional shift. Perhaps you no longer feel the same urge to check for messages. Maybe you still think about your soulmate, but the thought no longer completely controls your mood. Maybe you have started seeing 111 when you are focused on your own future, 222 when you are learning to create emotional balance, or 444 when you are choosing stability over uncertainty. If 555 has been appearing, maybe it is reminding you that change does not always mean loss. Sometimes change is how your life makes room for something healthier. My beloved child, angel numbers can be meaningful prompts for reflection, but the deeper sign is the way you are beginning to trust yourself. That is the awakening happening inside you. Don't look away, because your soulmate is beginning to ask themselves a painful question: why did I wait until I felt them pulling away to understand how much I cared? That question has been following them. It may appear when they are lying awake at night, when a familiar song plays, when they see something they wish they could share with you, or when a random memory suddenly hits harder than expected. Listen to this. They are realizing that fear gave them the illusion of unlimited time. They believed they could come toward you later. They believed the connection would remain exactly where they left it. But people do not remain emotionally frozen forever. Hearts learn. Souls grow. And your soulmate is starting to understand that while they were waiting to feel ready, you were becoming ready to stop waiting. Here is where the truth gets deeper. They are not only afraid of losing your presence, they are afraid of losing the future they secretly imagined with you. My beloved child, there may have been moments when they pictured what life could look like if the two of you truly came together. Maybe they imagined waking up beside you. Maybe they imagined traveling, building a home, sharing ordinary mornings, meeting each other's families, or simply having someone who understood them at the end of a difficult day. They may never have told you these things because admitting those visions would have made the connection feel too real. But don't scroll. Those private possibilities are returning now, and suddenly they are being replaced by another image, you building that life with someone else. Your heart needs this right now, because their fear does not mean you should rush back toward them. My beloved child, let them experience the consequences of their own choices. Not as punishment, but as truth. Sometimes a person only grows when they stop being protected from the results of their avoidance. If they delayed communication, they may now have to face uncertainty. If they took your presence for granted, they may now have to earn trust instead of assuming it. If they hid their feelings, they may now have to become vulnerable enough to explain them. This message is for you because compassion does not require rescuing someone from every uncomfortable realization. Listen to this, because there is something your soulmate has begun noticing about other connections in their life. Conversations that once distracted them may no longer feel satisfying. Attention from other people may not carry the depth they expected. Even when they are surrounded by friends, co-workers, or family, there can be a strange emotional loneliness underneath everything because what they miss is not simply company. They miss the specific way they felt around you. They miss being understood. They miss being seen without needing to perform. My beloved child, this is why losing you feels different from simply losing contact. They are beginning to realize that what disappeared was not just communication. It was an emotional space where they could be more themselves. Stay with me, because one of their biggest regrets is connected to something they never said when they had the chance. There may have been a moment when they wanted to tell you how important you were becoming. Perhaps you were sitting together, talking late at night, or simply sharing an ordinary moment that unexpectedly felt intimate. They almost said something honest. They almost let the wall down. Then fear stepped in, and the moment passed. Don't scroll, because your soulmate has replayed that moment more than once. They wonder what might have changed if they had chosen courage instead of silence. They wonder whether you would still be close if they had simply told you the truth. Something else is changing now, and this is where their spiritual awakening becomes uncomfortable. Your soulmate is beginning to see the connection between their past wounds and their current behavior. Maybe they were betrayed before. Maybe they once trusted someone who disappeared. Maybe they learned that opening their heart could lead to disappointment. So when your connection became intense, they responded to you as if you were responsible for wounds you never caused. My beloved child, listen closely. They are starting to understand that protecting themselves from an old story may have prevented them from experiencing a new one. That realization is painful because it means they can no longer blame you for the distance. Don't scroll, because their fear of losing you is slowly becoming stronger than their fear of being vulnerable. This does not mean they suddenly have everything figured out. It means the balance inside them is changing. Before, staying quiet felt safer than speaking. Now silence is beginning to feel dangerous because they can see what it might cost. Before, distance felt like control. Now distance feels like the very thing that could remove you from their life permanently. And my beloved child, that is why they are starting to imagine reaching out in a way they never allowed themselves to before. Pay attention, because they are rehearsing conversations in their mind. Maybe they imagine starting with something simple, "Can we talk?" Maybe they think about telling you that they were confused. Maybe they want to apologize. But each time they imagine speaking, one question stops them: what if they don't believe me anymore? Your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate knows that words may no longer be enough. They understand that if they come back, they may have to prove change through consistency. They may have to show you over time that they are capable of staying present when emotions become uncomfortable. Listen carefully, because 222 may carry a powerful symbolic lesson here: balance. Your connection cannot move forward if one person does all the emotional work. You cannot always be the one reaching out, forgiving, reassuring, and understanding while your soulmate remains behind walls. If this connection is going to become healthier, they will have to meet you in the middle. If you keep seeing 444, allow it to remind you that love needs a foundation. If you see 555, remember that transformation requires letting old patterns die. And if 111 appears when you are thinking about your future, let it remind you that a new chapter can begin whether or not it looks exactly like the chapter you originally imagined. Here is something they are finally admitting to themselves: they underestimated your ability to walk away. My beloved child, because you loved deeply, they may have assumed that you would tolerate almost anything. They confused your compassion with unlimited access. They thought your loyalty meant you would keep choosing the connection regardless of how little clarity they offered. But don't scroll. They are realizing that your softness was never weakness. You were patient because you cared, not because you lacked options. You gave chances because your heart believed in possibility, not because you were incapable of leaving. And now that you are beginning to choose yourself, they are seeing just how powerful your love actually was. Your heart needs this right now. If they return, you do not have to become who you were before. You are allowed to ask different questions. You are allowed to move slowly. You are allowed to observe. You are allowed to say, "I care about you, but I need to see consistency." My beloved child, spiritual connection is not a reason to ignore reality. If anything, awakening should make reality clearer. You can feel that someone is significant and still hold them accountable for how they treat you. You can forgive and still require change. You can believe in destiny and still choose peace over chaos. Don't look away, because your soulmate is beginning to understand that losing you would affect more than their love life. They are realizing that you influenced the way they see themselves. You may have encouraged dreams they had forgotten. You may have reminded them that tenderness is possible. You may have challenged them to become emotionally braver. And now they are wondering what happens if they let the person who inspired that awakening walk out of their life forever. Listen to this. That thought has created a kind of urgency that ordinary attraction never could. Stay with this message, because something they recently heard, saw, or felt may have intensified everything. Maybe someone casually mentioned your name. Maybe they noticed you becoming happier without them. Maybe they saw a photograph where you looked different. Lighter, freer, more confident. Maybe they heard that you were focusing on yourself or opening your heart to new possibilities. Whatever happened, it brought one realization into sharp focus: life is continuing. My beloved child, life did not stop while they were deciding whether to be brave. Listen closely, because their next challenge is no longer understanding their feelings. They understand enough now. The challenge is action. Will they risk vulnerability? Will they admit that they made mistakes? Will they speak before fear talks them out of it again? Will they finally accept that love cannot survive forever as an internal secret? Don't scroll, because this is the crossroads they are standing at. One path leads back into the same cycle of silence. The other path demands honesty. My beloved child, something in your own energy is asking you not to chase the outcome. Let them decide who they are going to be. Your role is not to push them toward courage. Your role is to remain aligned with the life and love you deserve. If they step forward with sincerity, you can decide from a place of strength whether that step is enough. If they remain silent, you will still keep moving. That is what makes your energy so different now. You are no longer handing them complete control over the ending. Don't scroll, because there is one final truth they are beginning to recognize, and it may change everything. Your soulmate is realizing that someday they may have to answer a painful question: did I lose the person I loved because I was too afraid to tell them? That possibility is becoming unbearable. They know they cannot erase the past, but they may still have an opportunity to change what happens next. And somewhere inside them, courage is beginning to compete with fear in a way it never did before. Your heart needs this right now, because the next chapter is not about whether they miss you. That part is already becoming clear to them. The next chapter is about what they are willing to risk in order not to lose you forever. My beloved child, they are beginning to understand that if they want you in their future, they may have to tell you something they have kept hidden from everyone else, something about the exact reason they became distant when their feelings were strongest. And when that truth finally rises to the surface, you may discover that their greatest fear was never loving you. Their greatest fear was believing that once they loved you completely, they would have something real enough to lose.